Hey guys, welcome back. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you probably remember a few weeks ago I posted a video about how fast or how not fast posts can rot out of post frames if they've been embedded into the ground instead of more modern methods like setting on concrete pillars or whatnot. So that video covered the problem. Today we're looking at the solution and what I did to try and save my barn. So right here we're looking at, as I mentioned in the last video, the Midwest permacolumns, and these are a concrete column with a rebar structure going through to the bottom and a metal bracket on top. So using the permacolumns, as you can see, I've done all 20 posts in this building so that the rotting portion was removed and now there's a concrete portion in contact with the ground. In addition to the posts rotting out, the other problem I had was posts sinking into the ground. And this was partially because of bad fill underneath, partially because they were rotting, and some of the posts just weren't dug very deep at all and didn't have a good fill underneath them. So what had to be done was, first of all, I went around the entire building and removed the grade board and the metal up to the bottom girth. That's not necessarily a necessary step to do. However, because I was replacing the grade board, I decided I'm going to add wainscot at the same time, and it's much easier to work on the columns if there's no steel there, because then, as you can see, there's just nothing around them. They're easier to dig around, they're easier to work around. I know I said I wasn't going to get a backhoe for doing this, but the only hole that I dug that was in relatively good digging conditions was the first one. I started digging out the second one and found that it got very rocky very quickly. This side of the building was mostly sand. The other side, mostly rock. So the sand was its own problem in that it kept trying to fill its holes back in, whereas the rocky ground was, once I had the backhoe, easier to dig. So I started out renting a smaller backhoe, and it was good for digging out the posts until we got to a post in the back corner there, and I found a gigantic rock. And it was actually directly underneath one of the posts. They had only buried that one about a foot, hit the rock, and decided to stop and just put the column on top of the rock. So I went out and I got a bigger backhoe, and that machine was great, with the exception of the only thing the little machine did better was I didn't have to worry about hitting rafters with the boom when I was digging inside. And I did manage to go the whole time without hitting a rafter, but I did take out a garage door opener, which, lucky for me, didn't work anyways and I had to replace, so doesn't make a difference. So, starting off, we went one post at a time on the side walls. And I was afraid the building was gonna move, so that's why I went one post at a time. It also kind of left some spots of the building that were just sitting on the grade board because the posts were so rotted. It meant that the wall wouldn't be able to move as much. So we dig around the post, cut it off with a saw, and we'd put our footing down, and then either off of the truss with using a large vertical beam, or we used door headers in some spots, the post next to it in some spots, just finding a good point to put a bottle jack under and lift that post up. Then using a rotary laser, we measured down from the truss to the plane the laser was on, and that's how we set the height of each post. And now they're much closer. I know, because I'm not an expert, they're not perfect, but they are better, because there were some posts, I think the biggest mismatch was up to 6 inches. Some posts were, at, call it 0, some posts were down 4 inches, some posts were up 2 inches. They were all over the place. So after that, the permacolumns come with an upfitter bracket, uplift bracket, to try and fight any forces of frost keeping them moving up. And we did bury these to the proper depth, so they're 4 foot or better, as opposed to, I think the deepest one I found on this building was at 3 foot. So after we get the brackets on the bottom, we backfilled around them, moved on to the next one. So we started on the front wall, which the camera is on, and that one was the strangest one because it has the 2 garage doors open in it. However, that did mean we could kind of double up and do 2 posts at a time in some spots. We used a Stabila plate level to make sure the columns were still where they should be, as well as string lines and tape measures, basically just to make sure the bottom of the post didn't move, because the top is already square because of the roof. So that was what made things a little bit easier as opposed to building a new building, was we didn't have to get the post perfectly on. We already had the building that was surprisingly still plumb and true on top of it, and we just had to get the posts plumb underneath. The biggest area where they could move was in the middle of the wall, because the wall would flex in and out a little bit. So using a string line, we could make sure that they were all still in line, plumb, true, all that good stuff. After we did the front wall, did the back wall, it's pretty easy. However, the easiest spot was when we got to the side walls. Because when we got to the side walls, because they're all on one truss, there wasn't nearly as much jacking involved, and we could do basically the whole wall except for the corner posts at one shot. So these side walls have 5 posts on them, 2 corner posts, 3 center posts, and we could do all 3 of those non-corner posts in one shot. And on the wall on the north side of the building, we didn't even have to jack those up. Those were right where we wanted them, and these ones were only down about a ½ inch after we did the corners on this wall. Here's the bottom of one of the posts, as you can see, rotting away. And we did, this isn't where we cut it off for the permacom. We took about another foot off of the top of this. This was down at ground level, and the posts are sticking up probably close to 2 feet above grade right now. This right here was my dead giveaway. Something was wrong. This door was not, it was snug on the bottom, as you can see, and that's because this post right here was one of the worst ones, and it was sinking down and wouldn't let the door close. So when we did these posts here, this was one of the first ones we did, and after we jacked it up, this door wouldn't even come into the frame at all. That's how bad it was from here to here. But as you can see now, pretty good. Now it's shaking a lot because here's the grade board, and it's currently not attached to any of the permacolumns right now. We're gonna have to get in there, and you have to use concrete fasteners to attach your new grade board to the permacolumns because they go up above it. But you can see here on this old grade board, just first of all, how much of it was gone and how deep it had sunk down into the grade. This right here was the old grade level. There's not much of the old grade level left right now because we had dug some of this out to get ready to the floor before we started putting the columns in. So right now some of the columns are sticking up out of the ground quite a bit, and that's just because we didn't backfill them yet. Go over here, and that's going to be the next step. I got a track loader coming in pretty soon, and we're going to backfill the columns and get ready for the floor, get the aggregate and the sand all graded out and ready to go so we can start putting the heated floor in. The one thing I did do was I did put fill around the base for at least the first foot, just to try and keep the columns from moving at all. It's really not been windy the last couple days, and like I said, we're going to have those completely backfilled by the end of the day tomorrow. Hopefully we'll be ready for floor in about a week, because to be honest with you, I'm getting sick of working on this project. I want to be bringing my tractors in and working on those instead. It's a lot of work, but it's going to be a great shop when it's done. Anyways, guys, I hope this video has been helpful to you. YouTube was really helpful to me when I was trying to figure out what to do with this, and hopefully I can pass that along to somebody else. There are other ways to save your posts. If you're fortunate enough to be in their service area, there's companies that will go around and put like a metal tube around them to try and straighten them out. And there's other companies that can do the installation of the permacolumns for you too. And if your soil isn't nearly as rocky as mine, you can even get it done a lot quicker than having to bring a backhoe in to do it. So there's lots more to come in this shop, guys. Hopefully you stick around, and thanks for watching as always.